Okay, so we're going to talk about why permaculture is relevant in today's climate. You've heard all of the reasons before, most likely, but I'm going to give you the examples or the reasons why they happen and how permaculture can help us overcome these as well. So the first one I want to talk about is soil erosion. Soil erosion happens because of the way we farm. So we farm with monocultures. A monoculture is a singular species of crop which is grown in mass. Okay, so you'll see it more than likely in your local area if you live in the countryside, and you'll see that in the form of barley, of wheat, and more than likely the staple crops. Although even types of orchards and different growing methods like this, as long as they have one type of species that is grown in mass, that can be seen as a monoculture. The opposite of that is a polyculture, which we'll get onto. But basically what happens is because the crop is harvested and there's no ground cover to hold the soil in place, and more than likely there's no trees. With the main crops, there'll be no trees to hold the roots, to hold the soil, or perennials that are left in there that can hold down the soil and stabilize the soil so it doesn't erode away. The way it erodes away is because there's, like I said, there's no ground cover, so the sun scorches the top of the the that soil turns kind of dusty material, and the wind will blow it away, and also the rain, because the rain's acidic, and also especially if the land is on a hill as well, it means that the rain will fall onto the top of the hill, the rain will run off, and that runoff, the pace of the rain and the amount of it as well, will take the soil and remove it from that land, eroding the soil away. So the way we deal with that is through crops like perennials, which are plants that last 7 years or longer. Any plants that hold the soil, retain the soil structure. In permaculture, we're looking for permanent cultures. So that means permanent ecosystems. If you look at a forest, you will see that the trees and the plants that are there, they stay there, they don't get harvested. And intensely anyway, like we see in modern agriculture. You more than likely will not see bare soil, you'll see moss growing over it, or you'll see grasses or different types of shrubs, different types of ground cover which cover the soil. You'll see loads of trees that hold the roots together, and shrubs that have been there for years and years and years that have stabilized the soil. And in this ecosystem, the soil does not erode, or it does not erode easily. So the next one is deforestation. The reason this happens is because our industries they need pasture land. So this is to do with dairy farming, meat farming. We farm animals that need pasture land, and like sheep, for example, even pigs, goats as well, horses. All of these animals are very common in our day and age, and they need pasture land. And what do I mean by pasture land? That is land that these animals feed off of. So what happens is that we clear the land to allow for the grass to grow easier, so that these animals can then eat. It's also the same with main crops like barley and the other monocultures. We clear the land and then we plant what we want in there. And yeah, I mean, the thing is with this is that we don't consider what's already on the land. There's no consideration for the biodiversity that's already there, the animal habitats. I mean, if that was a human's land, can you imagine the uproar that would be on the news, the radio, and how much media attention that would get if someone's home was being destroyed to put something else on there? But just because they're animals or plants, you know, trees, for some reason we've lost that connection and we don't see it in the same way. But also we're not given a lot of attention to what's there, which means we're not growing the right types of food that could be there, the right types of plants for the soil, because there's no consideration into increasing the soil fertility. The focus is on the crop, which is actually the result of having good soil fertility and a good healthy ecosystem. But for some reason it seems to me that we've jumped straight to wanting a good crop, and the means to get there is not through natural methods, it is through quick fixes like chemical fertilizers, our own fertilizers that we have made, which are not from plants, they are from chemicals which we've produced. So the way that permaculture would tackle this method is by actually going about it in a different way. So we design with as many aspects as possible, and by this I mean different aspects of life. So, you know, financial, the ecosystem, the human needs, what the soil needs, taking into consideration the climate and the biodiversity that's already there, the animal needs. And so our design really encompasses a lot more than what I'm seeing these days. And also intervening in natural cycles already. For example, there was this innovative company who when a tree would fall in their forest, they have a plantation of trees. When a tree would fall, or if it already started to become a lot dead, and they what they did is they either cut it or it fell, and they would cut up the logs and use them for fungi. And so all they're doing is intervening in natural cycles that would already happen, because what would happen is the tree would die, it would fall on the ground, and the fungi would eat it, and also all the insects would then eat this log, and it would degrade into the soil, adding nutrients into the soil. So they've just intervened at a point, and they've just took the logs and they make fungi grow on the logs, which are edible and which you could sell or you could feed the community with. The log is already going to degrade anyway, so they've just made it, given it another purpose, basically, multifunctional relationships. That's one of the permaculture principles. And observation is a massive part of permaculture, and you know, tying that in with the deforestation and, you know, not taking into consideration the climate that's there. Observation, we're looking at the ecosystem, what is already there, what does it need, etc. That's a massive part of permaculture, a massive part of how we can best serve the ecosystem and how we can best make conscious decisions about the next best thing to do. And without proper observation, proper surveying, which takes into consideration all aspects, or as many as we can, then we're not going to make the best decisions for the environment, and we really need to take responsibility for that. And there's a lot of companies now. Take building sites for example. They do not take any responsibility for the ecosystem, and they completely destroy it. They completely destroy the top layer of soil, and yeah, they really harm the environment. And it's a simple thing to observe and to survey a site. It takes tools to survey, of course, but to observe from this outsider perspective, it's quite a simple thing, and it's just completely disregarded. The next reason why permaculture is relevant in today's climate is a warming climate. So this is to do with natural causes as well as our own actions, which has created an increase in pollution and therefore an increase in global warming and climate change, which is it's important to recognise that there are natural causes for this, but we do have to take responsibility for our own actions, and we do have to come up with different solutions on how we can adapt to the changes in the climate, because inevitably a climate will always change. We are always going through a changing world. It is not stagnant. It does not just stop. Time carries on. So it's just about finding different ways on how we're already doing things. We've got, cars. We've had tons of cars that have been made, millions of cars, which pollute the earth. And if you think of all the aeroplanes as well, this has only really come about in the last 100 years or so. So our planet is going through big changes. And so for a permaculturist point of view, what we're looking to do is, accepting and working with change. That's another permaculture principle, which is quite key to mention here, being adaptable to the climate. It also comes into our continuous design, our feedback loop. Once you finish your design, there's a famous quote in permaculture, which is that design is never finished. And again, that is because the climate is always changing, the ecosystem is always changing. So once you finish your design, you'll continually be observing, looking for things that you can adapt or need to change or get more effective, more efficient at, and then reevaluating that action and observing again. So it's a continuous loop cycle. So it's important to keep the observations and the data available, and adjust your plans accordingly to the warming climate, to the change in your specific climate. The next reason why permaculture is relevant in today's climate is nutrient deficiency. So this is going back to, I would say, the kind of soil erosion, and this is to do with intensive farming again, monocultures. What happens here in a monoculture is that you get one plant which will take a certain nutrient from the soil, and that nutrient will then become deficient. And the reason for that is because if you imagine you've got the plant here and you've got the line of soil here, and so the plant takes the nutrient up and then it's chopped and harvested and taken away off the land. So that land now is deficient in that nutrient. And what happens is at the moment farmers are trying to put that nutrient back into the soil. Mainly what we're talking about here is nitrogen. That's quite a common one that all plants need. And what the farmers try to do is they try a quick fix and to put that back into the soil. But what happens is they can't control the rate of that chemical. They can't control the accumulation of it, and the amount they're putting on the land, and also the type of nitrogen they're putting back into the soil is destructive to the soil itself. What we need is natural ways of putting nitrogen into the soil that can be more regulated, and plants can do that much more effectively and efficiently than we can do it. And when we've got polyculture there, which is a culture, it's the opposite of monoculture. So polyculture is where you've got a mixture of plants that all work together to make the ecosystem stable, and they rejuvenate the soil, the land, they increase biodiversity, because you've got all these different plants that are good at loads of different things. Some plants take for example, nitrogen out of the soil, and another plant will put nitrogen back into the soil. So what permaculture is saying is put the two together, and so the ecosystem becomes a circular system, a feedback loop, which keeps on looping the nutrients round, so we can then step back and give minimal intervention into that system, because it starts to look after itself. So the way we tackle nutrient deficiency is by using the perennials, by using the permanent systems, like I was just talking about. Fossil fuels is the next one, and I mean, this is going back to warming climate, using transportation. Food mileage is a massive one as well. So how does permaculture tackle that? By growing local, by growing the types of foods that we want, that can sustain us throughout the whole year as well, because seasonal crops will help us throughout one season, but we need ways of making these crops last longer, or storing the food, for example fermentations and stuff like this. Reliance on big corporations is also another one, and it's just because it's convenient for people, right? Our working weeks are so intense, and a lot of people don't have time to grow their own food, and the big supermarkets, they have everything in there. So you go into the supermarket, you can get everything that you need for the week. The issue with this is that along with food mileage, you have all of the other destructive things that I've just talked about come with shopping and giving your money to the big corporations, because they buy products from companies that continue to degenerate the environments, continue to mine the environments. And so I think we got to ask ourselves, where do we want to invest our money? And also, if we're not getting some form of food or some supply of material, then where else are we going to get that from? So we need systems in place, and to start trading with each other locally, to start helping each other, and becoming a network within our own communities, rather than giving all of our power away to big corporations. And I mean, what happens if one day they just don't have something in stock? Like, I don't know, what happens if they don't have like a lot of food in stock, and only the people who have the most money can have that food? I mean, what are we going to do then? So we need different solutions for that, because like I said, we're giving our power away, and it's really, I think that's what creates the scarcity, is when we don't have that stability within our own homes, our own communities, and it creates scarcity, because it means we have to work all day to be able to afford the food, that we need to survive. Community hardship